This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and this is a game from the 2011 World Cup. I believe this is from this is game 2 of the semifinals between Ruslan Ponomariov and Peter Svidler. So they had drawn game 1 when Svidler had white, and if another draw was reached here, they go to a tiebreaker, or the winner would just win the match and move on to the finals. So Ponomariov, I guess he knew Svidler. Svidler just about always plays the Grunfeld. Not a lot of variety in his opening repertoire is black against d4, but the guy is just he pretty much knows everything about the Grunfeld. So it's pretty tough to catch him off guard in any kind of preparation or whatnot. But Ponomariov tries anyway. So he tries Queen A4 check, which you see in Bishop D7. Svidler thought for like 15 minutes on Bishop D7. I'm pretty sure that's the standard move. I guess maybe he was thinking about Queen D7 is another move, or Knight D7. Either way. So Bishop D7. Maybe he was just trying to figure out, what Ponomariov had prepared and whatnot, was trying to avoid it. So now Queen A3. And this Queen A3 idea against the Grunfeld is pretty complicated. Because sometimes the queen can get kind of stuck on the edge of the board. I think Kamsky crushed Topalov in some kind of similar Queen A3 line in the candidates matches earlier this year. So the Queen A3 line is tricky. And Svidler, Knight C6, and Ponomariov, I'm assuming he prepared this line unless he just, was playing super fast. But I think he did. So Svidler here with E5, very active. Maybe if he goes ahead and castles here, black's got to be careful he doesn't fall into a passive position. I mean, maybe, I don't know, E5 for white in this position seems way too early. Bishop E6, and black is setting up a good blockade. But even still, in this position, black really does need to be careful that white doesn't, maintain that really strong pawn center, because black is going to have a little. It's going to take some time to play C5. Maybe he's going to have to play B6, Knight A5, and then C5 to attack it. Anyways, so Svidler played E5, which is very direct. And it does open up the queen's diagonal, though, so it's going to be tougher for black to castle. But after a couple of exchanges, it is important to note D5 by white here, maybe not the best move, as black plays Knight E7 and F5 soon. Undermine, black's going to castle and play F5 and undermine white's center. So instead, Ponomariov, the standard treatment against the Grunfeld, you want to maintain this pawn center where you're going to be controlling a lot of central squares. And black is trying to undermine it. So Svidler with Queen E7, this is the plan behind E5. He wants to get this. The queen on A3 is exerting a good amount of pressure on that diagonal and stopping black from castling. So Svidler's probably going to force a queen trade. If Queen B3, maybe Queen to B4 and check. So instead, exchanging a knight takes, not worrying about a future D5 or anything like that, or rook C1 and then D5. Also retaining the right to castle. So now with rook B1 and Svidler castled queenside here, which pretty much leads to an exchange sack. If he doesn't castle queenside, bishop C6 runs into D5, and B6 would create a target on C7. White could just immediately go after it. It's pretty tough. Rook C8, Bishop A6. It's pretty tough for black to defend it. And any kind of C6, this just looks ugly. Not going to be very fun to play black here, because white's going to have a lot of targets. So instead, Svidler castles and pretty much getting ready to complete his development. And now Bishop C4. And Svidler played F5 here, which I thought was pretty interesting. Also possible was, I guess Bishop E6, but really not really. Black's going to lose a pawn or still lose an exchange and not have very good. It's just not going to be very good. So any other move, Rook F8 is just going to run into Knight G5. Black's going to be in some problems. Maybe he could have, maybe Rook F8, but you don't want to move the rook out of the center. You know, and if knight g5, now h6. Well, now bishop e8 and then h6. I mean, black is going to be all tangled up. White's going to start attacking on the king side. So, Svidler definitely justified with f5, the most active move. And if white just plays e5, like he's trying to get out of the complications, maybe, you know, this is exactly what black wants in the Grunfeld a lot of time, is to entice a center pawn to push and lock it up. So even though white's pawns, you know, he's got a protected pass pawn there, those pawns are very weak. I mean, they're not. It's not just that they're weak. Black just controls these light squares, so he's going to set up a blockade, and it'd be very tough for white to lift that. So instead, I mean, there is possibilities here. You know, I guess still knight g5, but maybe not as effective. Bishop d5, for example, or probably snatching the pawn, and then bishop d5. And it seems like black will be fine. He'll just be up a good pawn. A little tangled up, but I think he'll be able to get out of it pretty easily. All right, so very complicated game. So e5 is just on principle, you know, you don't want to play that as white. So knight g5, and Svidler has succeeded in wrecking the white center, but he's sacking in exchange. So now knight f5, and I saw a pretty cool line here. You know, I was like, maybe he can play rook d1, but then bishop a4, just hitting that rook and still trying to, you know, open up this rook to the attack. But bishop b3, and now I was like, okay, but then bishop b5. So it's a really interesting position. I mean, black's got the pawn for the exchange, and white's not going to be able to castle with this bishop just killing it. So black's also going to win d4. So rook d1 not looking so good. So the d pawn's going to drop, and Ponomariov just castled. So might as well. So now bishop takes d4. Maybe debatable, but it's understandable. I mean, if rook d1, maybe black is just going to play c5. Seems a little loose. It feels a little loose, but the knight on d4 is so strong, it's not loose at all. I mean, just b6, it's going to be fine. So the knight on d4 would just be way too strong. So Ponomariov, you know, the downside is that he's given up this dark squared bishop, which is going to make black's dark squared bishop even stronger. So now black has the two bishops and a pawn for the exchange. And now bishop d5. So really had two pawns in this position, but e4 is going to drop. So now after bishop d5, if black makes a normal move, maybe c6, for example, after bishop takes, white is going to have pretty good chances of holding the game. I wouldn't really say winning chances, because even though he does have the rook for the bishop and the pawn, it's going to be very tough for white to generate a win, because he's going to have to roll this 3-on-2 pawn majority on the king side, which is going to take time. Anyway, this is irrelevant because Svidler just played b5, and he's immediately, you know, so white's going to recoup that pawn, and now c5 immediately as well. So very excellent, you know, very attentive, on-point play from Svidler. Got to get those pawns rolling before white can try to set up, you know, activate this rook and start making threats against black's king. So now it's already too late for that for white. So g3. Any attempt, you know, to break these up right away. a4, probably just b4, and this is just a weakness now. Just, you know, it's not really going to set up a blockade because it's going to have to defend the a4 pawn. So instead g3, and this is exactly what I mean. I mean, white's counterplay is in the form of pushing these pawns. And it really takes a while. You know, he's taking a couple moves, and meanwhile Svidler just pushed all of these pawns, and he's got some serious counterplay. Bishop d5 trying to set up a little blockade. But, you know, now that really gave black's king time to get into the game. I mean, it's tough. You know, Ponomariov, he didn't really make a mistake in this game. Svidler just with a really nice exchange sack from the opening, and he's really seized the initiative. Also possible here was bishop b5, although maybe that opens the rook on the e file to come in. So activating the king, and you know black's going to need his king in this endgame for sure. So now just a4, just the pawns are rolling. It looks like white may have stopped him up with this bishop on c4, but Svidler, rook b8, really impeccable technique by Svidler. So he just launches the pawns down the board, gets the rook behind him. Now the king is centralized, ready to jump in, and now bishop f5. So a really nice move. I mean, maybe after f3 to rook b8. So white played rook e2 here. Maybe he should have played g4. Not a nice move to have to make, but I don't know. I mean, it just g4 is pretty ugly. Maybe bishop b5 here. This check doesn't really work. It's just temporary. It seems like bishop d3. Black has just got a great position. So g4, yeah, it's a pretty hideous move. So rook e2 makes sense, trying to defend. But now bishop f5 and now b3. So now if g4, the bishop can come to c2. So instead of bishop c2, which was a little bit loose, Ponomariov or Svidler here decides to reroute the bishop. I mean, it is loose here. But I guess maybe he didn't want white to get counterplay. This is definitely understandable. White would have some serious counterplay now. Still, I think black should be winning. No guarantees. You know, these rooks are dangerous, but maybe black can run. No, I mean this could have been crazy. Anyway, just going back here. So instead, you know, maybe that's probably why not bishop c2, because wanted to reroute the bishop and maintain control of e6. So now Ponomariov decides, and also the bishop is just keeping an eye on that g4 pawn, so f4 is impossible. So really nice technique from Svidler, just patiently nursing those pawns down the board and not allowing Ponomariov any chances whatsoever. So rook e3, just, you know, trying to reroute the rook, stop this rook. It makes sense, trade off the active rook. However, it does give black, you know, control over the c4 square. Very tough to hold here for white. These pawns are just too strong. And with the bishops, it's very, you know, this is impossible to hold. So Ponomariov, finally he gets the pawns rolling. But, you know, bishop e4, and now this is not looking good. So Svidler again activating the king a little bit. Now bringing the bishop in to guard this pawn all the way down. Ponomariov tries after c4, rook d7, and c3. A really, you know, just a nice move by Svidler. And Ponomariov could have tried for a really tough endgame with rook takes, and yeah, I mean, it's, you know, there's some theoretical endgames where the defending side with a rook against the queen, you know, can defend and set up a fortress, but this is definitely not one of them. I mean, black, first of all, is probably going to win this bishop. It's going to be impossible for white to maintain that, and even if he couldn't, even if, you know, let's just say something like this, even if in this position, I still think black can win with the queen against the rook and king and, you know, the pawn here, because white can't set up. There's no way to defend everything. So just something interesting, you know, a little textbook endgame. So instead, and that's really going to suck for white to defend that. That's not going to be fun at all. So after bishop c5, another nice move. Just no more checks. It takes, you know, still queening. So after bishop c5, Ponomariov had enough. He resigned. Really, that, you know, Ponomariov had a great tournament. He is a very impressive knockout player. I think he won this tournament maybe in 2004. So Svidler is about to start duking it out with Grischuk in the finals. So it should be a very interesting match. This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.